been very exciting this harvest. We've seen the first De Bruin, McIntosh & Son integrated Harrington seed destructors on the market in Australia. There's 10 units operating, most of them in Western Australia, and by all reports so far, they're doing very well. So an exciting development. It took about 20 years since Ray Harrington had the initial idea of destroying weed seeds as they exit the harvester, and it took 20 years to get to the point where we have the mills mounted on the harvester. So yeah, fantastic development. The integrated Harrington seed destructor was the brainchild of Ray Harrington a long time ago. GRDC put in lots of funding and got involved with the University of South Australia. Engineers there developed the system, and then now it's commercial. It is built by De Bruin Engineering and distributed and fitted by McIntosh & Son. So it's taken a long time to get to that point, and we now are at the point where we have a commercial machine in operation. So far it's been fitted to New Holland and Case harvesters. There is a Class harvester soon to be fitted, and hopefully in the future we'll see them fitted to John Deere as well. As with other chaff systems, we are only processing the chaff. So we need to make sure we get the weed seeds into that chaff and we get that chaff into the Harrington seed destructor mills. And so often there is a baffle fitted which directs that chaff flow into the mills, and the straw is chopped and spread as normal. This is a schematic diagram of where that baffle fits and how it works. This was drawn by Nick Berry, this diagram, and it really just shows that what we're trying to do is keep the weed seeds and the chaff below that baffle and have the straw exit the harvester above the baffle. So the Harrington seed destructor is a cage mill. The picture on the screen there is actually of the original tow behind seed destructor where we had 2 rotating cages. There's now just one moving part in the integrated Harrington seed destructor, and research by Michael Walsh is showing that both of these systems, both the tow behind and the integrated Harrington seed destructor, is destroying a very high percentage of the weed seeds that enter those mills. So if we look at the cost of the integrated Harrington seed destructor, it's got a high capital cost. It comes with a big price tag of $160,000 fitted. So how much does that cost? Well, it depends how big the farm is and what area that harvester is harvesting as to what that capital cost is. So the running cost of the Harrington seed destructor is quite high because of that capital cost, and there's extra fuel and maintenance. This example here is for roughly a 3,000 hectare harvest. Obviously for a higher harvest, that cost per hectare comes down because we average the capital cost over a larger area and vice versa. So for a 3,000 hectare harvest, we can say that the Harrington seed destructor is approximately $17 per hectare to run. The good news is there's no nutrient removal costs, so that's where the costs end. Also, there's the benefit that there's nothing to do after harvest. The weed seeds have been destroyed and there's no burning or other practices to do. So the pros of the integrated Harrington seed destructor, well, there's full residue retention, so there's no burning required and there's nothing to do after harvest. There's a high level of weed seed destruction. Michael Walsh's research has confirmed that, and he is now testing that on other weeds, including the major weeds in the US. So we'll look out for some data there soon. And there's the ability to do every cropped hectare. Some of the practices are hard to do over the entire farm. Once the integrated Harrington seed destructor is mounted on the harvester, it can be used over the entire crop. There are, of course, some cons with the integrated Harrington seed destructor. First and foremost, the high capital cost. It is an expensive machine and not every farmer will be prepared to pay that capital cost. There's a horsepower requirement to drive the mills. It's approximately 80, maybe 100 horsepower. We find so far that the growers have commented that Class 8 and 9 harvesters are handling the horsepower requirement just fine. In some cases, the growers have put a chip on the harvester to give extra horsepower from the engine, but in general, the harvesters are coping with that horsepower requirement. There's an increased fuel cost. There's another negative where we think it may destroy the grain, so it may not be a good idea to graze the stubbles after using a Harrington seed destructor. This hasn't been measured yet, but it makes sense. If we're destroying the grain, it may be hard for the sheep to gain value from that feed. And it's also difficult to estimate the harvest losses. We're putting any harvest losses into the mills and destroying it, so hard to measure harvest losses There is a system where there is a chute that lays over the top of the mills that can be put on just for the purpose of measuring grain losses, but it is a negative. So where does the Harrington seed destructor fit? Well, probably for continuous croppers and probably for the higher yielding end of continuous cropping. But essentially it fits everywhere. There is a high capital cost, but essentially the machine suits all farming systems, and that full residue retention is a benefit for all farmers. In summary, it took a long time to take this from concept to reality. It's great that these machines are now operating on harvesters in Australia, and we see a big future for them in Australia and internationally as the premium harvest weed seed control tool.